Welcome, dear listeners, to a very special episode of the Attune Project podcast. I'm your host, Sana Batul, and today we have a truly inspiring conversation in store for you. So today we are joined by Anna Mankee-Williams. Thank you, Anna, for joining us today. Anna, could you share with our audience your role and involvement in the Attune project?
Yeah, lovely. Thank you, Sana. So my name's Anna Mankee-Williams. I'm an Associate Professor of Art and Health within Falmouth University, and I have two roles on the project, on the Attune project. One is as Work Package 1 lead. So Work Package 1 is where we're using creative practices and arts-based research to surface the unseen and the unheard impact of adverse childhood experiences on mental health of adolescents. And the other role has an oversight role across the whole project, working very closely with the two co-PIs, which is Professor Kambui and Professor Yunus Ma. So I work very closely with them across all 6 work packages, supporting the various different elements of co-design, lived experience, specialist technical support where it's needed.
Thank you, Anna. I'm very fascinated by the whole research project, especially how art and psychology are combined. But I'm curious to know what unique or unexpected insights have you gained from using art-based practices in the Attune project that maybe conventional research methods may not have uncovered?
So I think the first thing is that the creative, slightly softer approach is definitely very much appreciated by young people who are experiencing and have experienced adverse childhood experiences. And the relationship building is actually quite swift when you use this methodology, which I think in this case, when you're trying to enable the surfacing of the unseen and the unheard, the relationship is incredibly important and not to be dismissed lightly. So the other thing in terms of the insight that has come out of the work that the creative practitioners has done is about some of the findings or some of the narratives that have been coming out from the artwork themselves is about I realise that you're aware of this, the importance of the repeated invalidation as an ACE. And I'm not sure that we would have got that from any other kind of medically based, science-based or linear-based questionnaire. So I think that the art, the creative practice and the art portfolio that they have created, it very, very clearly says in an alternative way that is really important, and it's the reaction of others to them that far outstrips in importance anything else that they are experiencing. And that does make you stop and think. And I'm not necessarily absolutely sure that we would have completely understood that in a different methodology.
Okay, interesting. That is indeed. So Anna, can you share a particularly memorable or moving example of a young person who experienced transformative journey through their involvement in a Attune project?
So I particularly am reminded of the participant from the LGBTQIA community, the young persons community in Cornwall, so in a rural area, and they participated in the dance art form. And originally when we went to them with the proposal around the dance art form, they were incredibly reluctant. And part of that is because of their lived experience, as they described to us, around body dysmorphia, the lack of self-confidence, the emotional traumas of, the societal expectations, the relationship or lack of relationships with others and understanding. And as those young people engaged with our creative practitioner in dance, and as they evolved through what dance and what physical movement could demonstrate, they really moved from being limited in their ability to talk about their journey and their lived experiences into becoming very, very confident to be able to describe those and to express those through dance. And when we took the film to them and to the broader group of the LGBTQIA community, they were in tears. They thought it was so powerful that they just were so happy, they were so confident, they were so absolutely bowled over by what they had created, and that they looked really amazingly cool, which is, some words that they used. And the transformation in those young people was incredible to see.
Can you talk a little bit about that film? What was it about, and what was the participation like?
So it was really quite intense. And the creative practitioner took them through. So she had a series of questions that she didn't ask them outright, but that she translated into movement that could express how they felt about some of these questions. So they didn't necessarily know what it was, if you like, that they were being asked through dance and through the movement. And for example, the representation of safe space was really, really interesting in that they had tape on the floor around, both feeling boxed in, but also feeling safe. Yeah. And there was also a really crucial moment as they were exploring safe space without necessarily knowing they were exploring safe space, where that safe space became a physical touch of another person with a lived experience. And that physical touch was either very light, for example, hands, or it was an enveloping, a safe enveloping. And so just kind of watching how they progressed through that journey and their confidence as they grew, and also the surfacing of these very, very, very deep and powerful emotions, you could see that they started to really get the embodiment within their creation.
That's very cool. Very interesting how they realize the power of their bodies and expression through the dance. And yeah, sure. So how do you see the integration of art and creativity as a means of empowering young people to take control of their mental health and well-being?
So I think the bottom line for me is that everyone can engage in some kind of creativity. At the very simplest, all you need is a pencil and a piece of paper, right? It's entirely inclusive. And I think that is really important, because there is so much nowadays that is not inclusive for young people. And obviously, there have been times recently where, we've had to engage young people generally through technology, but it can be really, really simple. And when participating in the creative practice, what becomes apparent is that the mind is calmed. It becomes a very deep experience, and it's almost, and this, there will be better words for this, Anna, but it's almost set free. And I think that is really important. And as you set the mind free, as you calm the mind, then you set it free. That's when the deep experiences can surface, which are very powerful and empowering. And that's when I think young people become curious, and that curiosity about what the art form can, not only through the art form that they can receive in terms of facilitating good mental health, but also what they can give in terms of enabling other people to understand mental health. So that giving and receiving, I think, is really important as well.
Okay. So if we, in terms of art-based approaches, if we talk about, their effectiveness, what, in your opinion, what is the most exciting or promising aspect of art-based approaches in the context of young people's mental health? And how might it influence the future of mental health care for this?
I think what's really interesting to me, because obviously I've got a health background, is that currently clinical pathways for diagnostics do not include any form of art-based or creative practice to enable the diagnosis to happen. And therefore, what you get is a very black and white, linear, survey, questioning type approach. And I think, if I'm completely honest, I think it misses a massive part, if you just do that, of a young person's life. So you don't necessarily completely get the whole picture around the mechanisms that have created whatever it is the young people are experiencing in terms of mental ill health. And so in that case, if you don't have that comprehensive picture, you cannot possibly, with the young person, develop a comprehensive therapeutic pathway, right? So I might not be answering your question here, but for me, it is that I think we're at a critical crossroads in terms of mental health for young people. So that's not only within society, so those more generalised social determinants of health, but also within that more confined health kind of mindset. And we kind of need to choose the right path now. And I don't really see why we wouldn't encompass and embrace art and creative approaches within that both diagnostic and both that therapeutic sort of element, both in the health and the wider social educational sort of sectors.
Anna, you have touched a bit on that, but I would specifically like to know, as you delve into this field, have there been any surprising challenges or obstacles you have encountered when applying art-based practices to understand and improving young people's mental health?
Well, one of the first challenges is some young people are reluctant to engage in creative practice. I'm not sure I completely understand why. I'm not sure any of us completely understand why. And there is a question about whether or not, because we have designed out play, and bearing in mind I'm only talking about this country, because we've designed out play and we've designed out opportunities to be creative, is it something that is increasingly unknown for them? So that was a challenge. And then, for example, with dance, there was an extra degree of reluctance, again, potentially because of the exposure around your physical form, and, the question about what can dance offer me, so there's something there. So in terms of the challenge, the sort of overcoming some of the challenges, it's always been about relationships and that relational interaction. And what I would say about optimizing creative practice within research, you have to give that time up. You have to know you can't go straight in, ask them a load of questions and expect anything that's useful back out. So, and in terms of the other part of your question was about what facility,
how to overcome those challenges.
Yeah. I would absolutely go in terms of my first priority around allowing time for the relationships to build.
So if we talk about, art-based practices, we are talking about, how it has helped young individuals. Could you also elaborate on how the art-based practices in the Attune project have helped create a sense of community and support among young participants? And what role does peer interaction play in this process?
I think the peer interaction is crucial. And what I've seen is that you have a number of young people who come together because they're interested in either the art form or they're interested because they have lived experience of mental ill health. And I'm thinking particularly of the animation group they were all in HE, but they didn't know each other before they came together. And having that common talking point or common ground about, I'm particularly interested in animation, or I'm particularly interested because I have mental ill health. And in that case, without realizing it, every single young person, and there's 9 young people that participated in that particular group, were a part of the LGBTQIA community. But they didn't know that, and we didn't know that. So the peer community and the development of those relationships outside of a classroom, outside of anything that's expected of them, like a patient group or anything like that, they come as themselves. And I think that is really important. So it's absolutely crucial about the peer interaction in terms of not only success for themselves, and to this day, those young people that have participated in animation are, I believe, still in contact. So I think that's really positive. And certainly those young people who are neurodiverse and participated in Kent around art-based collage and that kind of art-based creative practice, they are definitely still in contact. And again, they were a disparate group. They came together because they had experienced mental ill health and they were neurodiverse. So it's almost as if, and this is not research-based, if you come together with two interest areas, you somehow meld and you get a fusion going on that becomes, it's not forced.
Right. Anna, you just talked about, dance, animation. And can you highlight any specific artistic mediums or techniques that have proven to be particularly effective in helping young people express themselves, also navigate their emotions within the project?
Yeah, so I'm going to focus on, I think, photography and film, but particularly photography. So we used photography with 3 groups. One was a group of young carers, and they were of the younger age group, and most of them were under 16, and in an 11 to 16-year-old school, and in a youth group. And the photography, not only the taking of pictures, but the actual explanation of how to take a picture and how to use the Instax camera. So it wasn't just go take pictures. It was about being thoughtful and reflective and understanding the camera as a part of yourself. And so the photographer, and then them having the absolute power of sifting through all of the photographs that they took and describing then, either in words or non-words, it didn't matter, which photographs were the most important to them, and then putting those in a zine so that they had a lasting record for themselves of not only beautiful photography, and I have to say there wasn't one young person who didn't produce an amazing photograph. So not only of the beautiful photography, but to have it in a lasting sort of portfolio was really good. And then for all of those groups, there was a corresponding film made. Not quite all of the groups actually, but a corresponding film made. And of course the excitement of film. So of all of the art forms that we used, film was the most exciting for them, right? You know, because they kind of think of Disney and, you know, whatever else, Marvel. And again, the filmmakers, they became filmmakers in their own right. So this is, again, not about adults or a research project doing something to you, which is what happens when you take a survey, right? Yeah. We are doing that to you. This is about you become a peer researcher. You become a co-creator, right? And that is a really nuanced dynamic within the relationship. You are giving up power. You're giving agency to these young people so that they can explore and develop their own, and also then making sure that they have within their grasp that technical understanding as well. That's when you really, you know, it's not just I'm giving you a camera and you have agency. It's about you're going to understand how that works. And it's very subtle and it's very nuanced, but I think it's very effective.
So now, just to wrap it up, what does the future look like for the Attune project and the broader field of research utilizing art in the context of young people's mental health?
So I think the future looks very bright. I don't think it's without its challenges because we're absolutely operating in an interdisciplinary space. And I think that is significantly challenging for research from researchers with both backgrounds, both the science background and the art-based background. And then when you bring community into that and potentially business into that, actually it's a difficult space to operate in. But I think the power where you bring people together, and art-based research has an equality of voice, an equality of robustness about the insight that you're creating, and also has the ability to really drive the understanding of what the participation in the creative practice can deliver. I think that we have an amazing potential to have a much better, deeper, more comprehensive understanding of the question that we're asking, regardless of what that is. So I think it's very exciting. I think it's challenging. It is a little bit scary for some people, and it can be very difficult sometimes and challenging when you're looking at sort of research funding and proposals to say, well, what would art do in this space? Well, hey, here is what art would do in this space. And you have to be articulate about that.
Yeah. Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much, Anna, for the wonderful insights, very useful insights on Attune and adverse childhood experiences. I think it will be very, very useful for our audience. And I mean, your input has truly enhanced our conversation today. Thank you so much for joining.
You're welcome.
You.